So you guys are going to write down some more things about primary and secondary sources, and then we can attach that to your T-chart later on. So there are some things in your video that I wanted to clarify, and there were also some things I wanted to add on. First off, I'm going to be looking at some primary sources like autobiographies, postcards, and artifacts. Let's start with autobiographies. An autobiography sometimes is confused with biographies. But if you look at the word, it'll tell you what it means. For instance, auto means self. So if you think of a word like automobile, auto means self, mobile or mobile means to move. So automobile means self-moving. So auto means self. Bio means life. And graphy means story. So autobiography is a story about your life. And so if you're getting them like confused, try to remember that auto means self, and that should help you work out that problem. So here on my example, I have Barack Obama, and he wrote a book about himself called The Promised Land. And so that is an example of an autobiography, and it's also an example of a primary source. And it's a primary source because he knows what happened in his life, and he knows how he felt about those things. And he's writing about them in his book, A Promised Land. Postcards. Postcards, a lot of times you can, people send when they're on vacation, but you can send a postcard at other times as well. But they have a picture on the front, and then on the back, they have a small place for you to write a message and to write an address. And so you write a little message on there like, having a great time here. We went and saw these museums, and my favorite painting was this. And then you can send them off. And I know in the past, when I used to go on family vacations, we would always pick these up and send them to our grandmas. Now, you're writing about your experience typically on these postcards. You know, what you saw, what you ate, what you were thinking or feeling. And so that's going to make that a primary source. Artifacts are also primary sources. They're something that you can touch. Now, they can be really old, like say an arrowhead or a piece of Greek pottery. They could be World War I helmet, or they can be something that's more modern, like say this wedding dress from 1980. And artifacts are also going to be primary sources because it's how it was at the time. For instance, this is what a soldier during World War I would wear. This is what someone who was a Native American would hunt with. Okay, so it's what it would be like at the time. And again, it doesn't have to be ancient. It can be more modern. So if you can kind of think back to maybe a time where you went through maybe a grandparent's dresser drawer or closet and you found like a cool guitar, or maybe you found some ice skates, or say the old wedding dress. Those are artifacts, and those would be primary sources. Now, a secondary source I'm going to talk about is a biography. So now we're switching gears and going to the other side of the T-chart. A biography is when you write about someone else. So here, this guy named Timothy wrote a book about Frederick Douglass. Still going to be very informative. It'll teach you about Frederick Douglass, but it's not actually by Frederick Douglass. So, but you can still learn a lot from biographies and from secondary sources. In fact, a lot of information we learn at school is from secondary sources, like say on textbooks, or maybe biographies that you read in your English language arts classes or social studies classes, or from the library. Still very educational though. So additional information that you might want is that primary and secondary sources are both useful. Again, most of the information you get at school is from a secondary source, because it's not like I can go and interview King Hammurabi from ancient Mesopotamia because he's been dead a long time. And so the things that I know about him come from maybe other teachers or from the internet or from other books, maybe even the textbook. And that's the way with science as well. A lot of that stuff is secondary source information. Or if I talk about the Iraq War, I haven't been to Iraq, so I'm getting that stuff from the news or from the internet or from books. Still important information, still factual information, just a secondary source. Primary sources are very useful as well. In fact, a lot of people will prefer primary sources over secondary sources because it's coming right from the person who saw it happen or who was a part of it. So if you think of something like a rumor would be a secondary source because it's kind of passed down the line. Maybe it was told to someone, and then that person told someone else, and that person told someone else, and that person finally told you. Well, once the rumor gets to you, you might be like, I actually just want to go ask that person who this is about so I can get the real story. And so for primary sources, we like them because those people can tell you actually how they feel. They can tell you actually what they saw. Now, sometimes, however, people lie or have bias or just have very different perspectives on a situation. So you still can get misinformation from a primary source and a secondary source. One good example of that is a pharaoh or king of Egypt, and he was really having a tough time. His economy wasn't that good. His people weren't very happy with him because he had a lot of wars going on and things just weren't going well for him. And so he really needed a big win. He needed something good to happen. So he fought against this group of people. And when he came back, he told everyone that he won, that he actually led them into battle, and that they didn't just win, but they totally slaughtered these people. Like they wouldn't be a problem anymore. And he even had people hired to carve pictures into the sides of walls, showing him in a chariot racing into battle and leading his people to victory. So for thousands of years, people believed that this pharaoh won this battle. But come to find out, it was actually a tie. And we found that out by reading information from other civilizations. And it showed that really it was a tie, and in fact, he didn't even lead them into battle. So you can have misinformation from primary and secondary sources. And so though we might prefer primary sources, you always have to be careful. And you have to remember there might be bias, especially when reading things from pharaohs or kings, because they're only going to write about the positive things that they did, and they might over exaggerate. And you just need to check your sources and just see if there's any other perspectives as well, or just see if it's flat out true or a lie. If you have any questions, please let me know.